Today's episode is brought to you by Patreon. If you're interested in supporting the show, go to patreon.com/JoshuaVelas and become a $2 backer today and get early access to the new episodes. I'll be leaving a link in the description down below, but for now, on to today's episode. You're listening to the Augmented Experience podcast. I'm your host, as usual, Joshua Velas. I'm a student, musician, and a gamer at heart. Join me as I sit down every week to talk about all the latest news in the technology, business, and video game world. I hope you guys enjoy. All right, everybody. Welcome back to the show. My name is Joshua Velas. I am your host, as usual. And obviously, welcome back to the show. Today's episode 98 of the show, and I know what you guys are going to say. Josh, it's been a week. And it's been one long week to say it kindly, it's been a long week. Obviously I'm going to do a little bit of house cleaning before we go into today's episode because, I like doing house cleaning. Obviously thank you guys for all the love and support. It really means a lot to me. You guys keep coming back and listening to these episodes. The fact that you guys keep downloading the episodes at a crazy pace, because we definitely got a lot of downloads in this week that I've been gone. I've actually been following and keeping up with it, and it's pretty crazy to say the least. So thank you guys so much for the continued downloads and love and support. It really means a lot to me. Obviously, thank you to my Patreon backers for continuing to support the show. It really means a lot to me. Obviously, yes, we only have one backer, but that one backer is an amazing person. And thank you for continuing to support the show. Granted, if you do want to support the show, hey, you guys already know the Patreon links in the description, so you guys can just click on that and become a $2 backer and, get early access to new episodes, And in time, we're going to be working on some little special content for you guys, so keep, your eyes peeled for that, But we definitely have an interesting episode to talk about today. And I know this is episode 98. I wanted to do video for this one, but then I probably came to the realization that it would cause a lot of hassles, and I already made the promise that we're going to use it for the episode 100 special. So yeah, we're just gonna hold off on it, but from that, I'm actually excited for today's episode because it is a real talk. We will be doing a real talk today, which pretty straightforward, but this one is definitely a real talk that I've had on my mind for a while now, and I only decided to do it due to some circumstances, which I feel like the last two real talks, this one and the last one, were mostly driven by things that have happened, and I only felt it was appropriate to give my take, my response. So today's real talk is going to be over the idea of dealing with loss. And I know this is a very heavy topic. We're not going to pretend that this isn't, and we're not going to be careless with it, because this is a topic that carries a lot of weight, whether it be emotionally, mentally, and it's a heavy topic. And to me, this is a topic that I would say I'm very well versed in discussing, because I'm very familiar with this topic. It is an idea that I struggled with for many, many, many years. It is an idea that didn't really click into my head until it finally made sense. And even then, it doesn't mean that everything has been figured out. And I really want to make that very clear when I talk about this, because when we go through this discussion, I don't want you guys to feel like I have everything figured out. Because that's the reality of life, is you never have everything figured out. You never will. And I just want to make that very clear with y'all that, look, I don't have all this stuff figured out. I don't have all the answers to all the questions that you're going to have regarding this, or even going forward. I don't have all the answers, I'm only limited to what I know and the experiences that I've been through, and just me sharing those experiences with you. And with me, this is something that I've felt comfortable that now it's time to be more open. And I always say that to me, or really it's something that my mentor and me talked about, is yes, in comparison to a lot of my peers, I don't have all the nice fancy toys. I know that my friends work in nice, good studios with good audio equipment, good video equipment. They've been doing this for a long time. They already know what they're doing. They have bigger followings. But I think with me, what makes me stick out is the fact that I'm very genuine and I'm very open, and that I'm very willing to be vulnerable with y'all, that I'm willing to not pull my punches, essentially, and I feel like that's where I draw my greatest strength from, because I'm just someone that's very good at being open. Like, I'm a very open book, and that's obviously what we're talking about today, because the idea of loss is not new to me, to say the least. It really isn't. In my time so far of being on this planet, yes, I've lost many people. Like, to me, I've lost three siblings. I've lost my aunt, I've lost my grandmother, and recently my grandfather. And granted, yes, one of my brothers, I didn't really know him so well when he passed, but the other two definitely hit me very hard. And I've learned many lessons in the process of losing people. Dealing with loss, to me, has always been a very core part of my being, because it's what's helped shape me to be the person that I am today. It's because of those experiences I've been able to grow and change my perspective on how I view life and how I handle different situations and how I handle my relationships that I have with people. And I want to make this very clear, though. My experience is not your experience. Everybody is unique in their own way. Everybody's going to deal with things their own way. The only thing that I believe is that there's always a better way than what we think. That there's always maybe a healthier way of handling things, that sometimes we don't choose the healthy option because the unhealthy option is comfortable. It's normal. And we're going to be tackling that idea, because dealing with loss is something that becomes a very tricky and touchy subject. And I think in order to become more vulnerable in this discussion with y'all, it's only fair that I share more about myself and a little bit deeper dive into what goes on in my head, But, going really into it, I remember when I was 11, that's when I really dealt with the first loss that really hurt the most. Because like I said, one of my brothers that passed away, I didn't really know him so well, and I didn't really interact with him so well, and I was also very young. I was like around 4 or 5 in that range, 6, and so I didn't really share so much emotion, which I know it kind of sounds messed up to say it, but it's just I just didn't interact with him that much, and I didn't have like that kind of discussion. But fast forward to when I was 11, that's when I lost my aunt. When my aunt passed away, it definitely hurt the most. Mainly because at that point in my life, I felt very alone. I felt very unloved. I felt like all I did was screw everything up. And I had this mindset of, why do good people always have to leave, but people like me get to stick around? That was a question that I had to battle with for many, many years when my aunt passed away. When my aunt passed away, I went into a 3-year depression. I constantly pushed people out. I constantly didn't want to talk to anybody about this stuff. I was very good at hiding how I felt, and I put on a facade that I was okay, I don't care. It's all about me, But on the inside, I was just dying a million times over, because I couldn't handle the grief of my aunt passing, because it was somebody that cared about me so much, and my aunt was just such an amazing person. And then I was just like comparing her to myself, and I'm like, dude, I'm just scum. Why am I still breathing? And it wasn't until I got to high school, and high school to me, and this is just a little side topic, but high school to me is what I contribute to my healthy growth. And it helped me to understand the value of family and friendships and relationships, And it mainly started because of a conversation I had with a guy that I didn't even know yet. And because of something he told me, it helped give me a spark of hope that maybe I'm not so alone. You know, maybe I'm not alone, and that there are people that care about me. And then over time, I began to open up more and more until, you know, life kicked me in the teeth again. And that's when my grandma passed away. And life sucked when that happened, because I got to meet my grandmother for the first time in person, like as a grown up. I was 14. I got to meet her. And every morning when I got to meet her, or every time I woke up in the morning, she would always say, "What a precious child." At the time, I knew that I wasn't that in my mind. I just like brushed it off. I was like, "Oh, thank you, Grandma." But I never understood why my grandmother always said that to me, and I still don't understand to this day. Because I knew in my mind, I had already said that I was the furthest thing from that, you know. And I didn't really spend so much time with her, but the 1 week I got to be there. And that stung, because that was the last time I got to see her. And it hurt because my grandmother passed away January 1st of 2015 at 12:30 midnight. That stung, because we were celebrating, welcoming the new year. My family, my mom, my sister were on their way to Costa Rica to go see my grandmother. And that happened. And it's like, I felt so much shame. I felt so horrible, because that happened. And I was just a complete emotional wreck. Like, I was already getting out of my 3-year depression at that point, but that just dug me even further into that hole. And I just couldn't handle it. I remember that summer, I got to spend a month in her room. Basically, when I went to go see my family over there, I stayed in my grandmother's room. And to me, that was one of the hardest experiences I could imagine, because it was hard for me to be in my grandmother's room with her not being there. And then I saw her grave, and my aunt's grave, for the first time. And it broke me emotionally. I remember I spent hours locked in my grandmother's room, just crying my eyes out. And it's because of that experience that something clicked in my head, because I kept asking myself, why me? Why is somebody like me still here? And I asked myself that question for hours, crying. And for some reason, in the process of asking those questions, thoughts of people that I cared about started flooding my mind. And to this day, it still doesn't make sense why that happened, but I'm glad that it did, because it helped show me that, look, maybe there's another way. Maybe life isn't the way that I thought it's supposed to be. That maybe it can be better. And I walked away from that experience, that month in my grandmother's room, with a renewed focus, or at least in the sense that, I like how my band director put it. It's like, Josh, your heart was in the right place, but you were still missing a piece. There was a piece of the puzzle that you were still missing. And it was evident. Even though, yes, I was definitely more happy, I was more calm, I was more relaxed, but there was still, I wouldn't say weakness, but there was still something missing, that it felt incomplete, that it still wasn't fully there where I needed to be. And it wasn't until my mentor came into my life, and, well, my first mentor, my teacher, and he helped give me the resources that I needed, and helped be that, I'd say, that person that's willing to just sit down and be like, you know, how can I help you? Like, I'd love to listen to your story. he was the first person to do that for me, because that was always something that I always identify as an unmet need for myself, because I just never felt like anybody cared. I just always felt that nobody wanted to listen to me. And now you have this person just sitting right in front of me is like, hey, I love to listen. And from that day on, it led to a healthy relationship growing between us that, he ended up becoming my mentor and guiding me and helping me to understand the things that I understand now. And even to this day, still gives me advice on many things. Because like I said, I don't have everything figured out. Nobody does. That's just the reality of it, is you'll never have everything figured out. And in the process, I was able to grow and get the missing piece that I was looking for and that I really needed. And I'm glad that it came at a right time, because when I found that piece that I was missing, my brother passed away. And I always say it was my first test, because I asked myself when my brother passed away, why am I not as sad as when my grandmother and my aunt had passed away? Why am I not as sad? And this is a person that literally lived right down the block from me and I saw every day and I loved him to death. Why am I not so sad? And the answer in my mind wasn't very clear. Now it's very clear. But at the time, I asked myself the question, why? And it became more evident because I began to understand that, look, this is, I wouldn't say as bad, like, it's not as bad as it seems, but in my mind, I had more hope that things were better, that things were going to get better because of this, that this was a learning experience that would help my family grow and help me grow in the process. And in the process, it helped me to become the leader that I needed to be for the band when I finally got the position. It helped me to rebuild relationships with people, because I began to understand what it meant to have, or I'd say this is when I began to understand that water became thicker than blood, because the band began to open up to me and they began like saying, or really showing that they were a family to me. And I began to acknowledge them as a family, and I began to rebuild relationships within my own family and fix relationships with people that I'd hurt in my past. And then fast forward, when I finally get the band leadership position, later in that week, my sister passes away. And my sister was somebody that loved me incredibly. My sister loved me so much that you can't even begin to imagine. Like, she was always asking, how was I doing? What am I up to? Always checking up on me. And I just couldn't care so much. And I always said that stung to me the most, because the thing that I was looking for the most was to have somebody always saying, hey, how is he? I want to spend time with him. I want to listen and talk to him. The thing that I always complained that growing up that I felt that I never had was always right there in front of me. And that's what stung the most with that. And it's what hurts the most, And it's because of that experience, it definitely helped me understand, look, I need to be more mindful of what's going on around me. I need to acknowledge that these feelings are real, that I'm not alone anymore. Things are different. And throughout the course of my senior year, I began to realize that things were different. My perspective on life had changed. How people viewed me changed for the better. I began to repair relationships. I began to become a leader. I began to become a mentor to some guys. And it was awesome, Fast forward to a few weeks ago, my grandfather passed away, I'm trying not to get teary-eyed, But my grandfather passed away. It was hard, because, I know my grandfather was, very hard at times, That's just how my grandfather was. But I knew that my grandfather really cared about us, He he always made me feel special, you know. He always told me, you know, que muchacho. And it really was not easy, you know. Like, I know I'm definitely more calm about it, but that doesn't mean that the wound still isn't fresh, that there's still some processing need to be done. And, you know, this is obviously a clear example of me just being vulnerable with y'all that, look, I don't have everything figured out, you know. But I, in my mindset, have at least acknowledged that it was for the best. Because I knew that my grandfather had been suffering for a couple of years now, that he was dealing with so much emotional pain, physical pain, and it only made sense that this was what was best, you know, that it was what's best. And sometimes it's hard to realize that, you know, because we always say, it's a saying that a lot of people like to use, like, you know, when somebody says, oh, like, I'm ready to go, man, I'm ready to go, just be done with all this, and somebody always rebuttals, yeah, you may be ready, bro, but I don't think we're ready for that. And in my grandfather's case, I remember when my grandfather, he always told my parents, or he's always told my mom, my aunts, and my uncle, the day that he's gone, it will be because he's ready, and they're ready. My grandfather always told, it was a piece of advice that he gave my mom and my aunts and all them. I couldn't really translate it properly because I didn't really hear it so clearly. But my grandfather did not believe in bowing down. He did not believe in, you know, he's a very proud man, you know, but at the same time, very loving and caring. He was hard at times with tough love, but he was always really cool. And this whole experience has definitely changed my outlook on many things, you know. It's helped me to appreciate more of the relationships that I have right now. And at the same time, it also helps me to be more mindful and continue to be mindful, because it's, you just never know sometimes, you know. And that's the reality, is you're not always going to know everything. You're not going to know the day you're going to die. You're not going to know the day when you get a new promotion, you get a new job. You're not going to know. And sometimes we think as humans we're bulletproof, and sometimes we think that we have everything under control, and we don't. That's just how we are. We are limited people. And yes, granted, there are many things in our lives that we can't control, but we can't control everything. And that's just how it is. And I always say that for me, what made things so much more bearable and made it so much easy is because that I am somebody that has hope that things can be better and that things will be better. That my perspective on things is that I have more of a hopeful perspective on life. That I know that things are going to suck. There's going to be days when things are going to be rough. And trust me, brother and sisters, like, I've seen those days, you know. There's just those days, you know. I've been defeated I don't know how many times, whether it be in bad relationships, doing bad on tests, you know, getting my butt kicked in video games. Like, I've taken some mighty L's, and I own up to it. I've owned up to the L's that I've taken with not cherishing the relationships that I had while they were here, you know. And I'm not going to say your experiences are just like mine, because they're not. Same way that I always tell people is like, I can never truly understand how you feel 100%. I can't, because it's your experience. It's your emotions. It's, relationships become very interesting, you know, and when somebody passes away feelings make things complex, you know, because everyone is going to handle something differently. Everyone's going to react differently. Everybody's going to cope differently. But what I always say, because I always tell people, it's like when somebody passes away, for one of my friends, if say they lose somebody and it's somebody that I haven't personally lost, I always tell them, I can't begin to put into words how you feel and how I can relate to you, because I don't think I can. And I'm always reminded by my mentor. He always tells me, Josh, think about it like this. You may not know exactly how that person feels, but you do know how it feels to lose somebody. You do know what it feels like to be sad. You know what it feels like to be heartbroken. You know what it feels like to not be good enough, or to feel like if only I had done better. You may not be able to understand that person 100%, but you understand the fundamentals that always stay there. The universal fundamentals are always there. They're constants for a reason. They don't change. The feeling of, you know, feeling sad, or feeling not good enough, or feeling like you could have done better. All these things, I could go down the list, and they're all constants. And it's what makes us easy to relate to. It makes relating to one another much easier, because even though, yes, we may not be able to share the exact same experience, like say you may have lost your father, I may have not lost my father. That doesn't mean that we cannot have a discussion, that I can't understand your perspective, because I'm going to understand your perspective, because I can relate to that feeling of losing somebody. Granted, it may not be the exact same way, but it's still there. There is a connection there. And it allows us to have a discussion where I'm able to listen to your perspective and apply not only that constant, that universal constant, but also grasp your perspective, because you're the one sharing it to me. And I always tell people that the easiest way to deal with losing somebody, or dealing with loss to begin with, is being vulnerable, being honest, being genuine. Don't be afraid to share how you feel, because it's how you feel. You know, don't be afraid of that. You shouldn't. And I know a lot of people kind of get scared when you say that, you know, like, share how you feel. Because I know a lot of people that have been like, bro, I've shared my feelings before and I got burned in the past. I talked to this person about this and they said this, they shared this, I told them not to, and I get it, you know. Stuff like that happens. But that really leads into like another point to keep in mind is like, who are you running with? You know, who are the people that you're surrounding yourself with? Are you surrounding yourself with people that are going to help you grow and help you through these times, are going to be there when things hit the fan, or when you lose somebody, that they're going to call you and be like, hey, how are you doing? How are you processing this stuff? Is there anything that I can do for you? How can I serve you? And you have to ask yourself, do I have people that will do that for me? Do I have people that will check up on me when I need someone to talk to? That when I tell them, hey bro, this happened, I need someone to talk to, can we talk? And they'll make time. You want to surround yourself with people that are healthy. It doesn't make sense to, like, the way my therapist always put it for me is like, Josh, why would you surround yourself with unhealthy relationships if the goal is to minimize unhealthy relationships and maximize healthy relationships? You know, if that's the goal, why do we keep doing the opposite? And it's just the reality of it, that sometimes we as human beings are very stubborn. We're fickle. And I always say it's because we choose what's comfortable and we don't like getting out of our comfort zones, even though getting out of our comfort zones is what leads to healthy progression and healthy growth as people. It changes our mindset. It changes our perspectives. And one piece of advice that my friend gave me, and I know he's going to know this because, you know, he listens to my show a lot, but I feel like he's going to tell me something when I share this, but a piece of advice he gave me is like, Josh, okay, this happened. This experience happened. And because it happens, you are now going to experience a new normal, because what you considered normal before, your life as normal before, can no longer exist because this happened. But you're going to experience a new normal. And because of that, it's going to be better. because now it's adjusting to what has happened, what has changed. And in my case, yes, a new normal is weird because now I have to live in a world where my grandfather's not there. And all the logistical issues that come with it, and all the emotional issues that come with it, and all the, the stuff that comes with it, the weight that is brought with that is caused by this happening, or it's the effect of what the cause is, which the cause is my grandfather passing, and then the effects are everything that happens because of it. And I know a lot of people lost some people during this time. I know my friend lost an uncle. Another friend lost her grandmother. One of my friends lost his best friend. Another friend lost her grandfather. And it just keeps going on. That people are just losing people left and right. And maybe it's not because of the whole stuff going on outside, but in these times it becomes very difficult because sometimes you're not able to see that person and say goodbye. And sometimes that's hard, dealing with loss, because there's some people that aren't, I wouldn't say they didn't get the privilege to say goodbye. And that sucks sometimes, I didn't get to say goodbye to my aunt, my grandmother, my brother, my first brother that passed away. I didn't get to say goodbye to my grandfather. I got to say goodbye to my brother and my sister, though. And I always say in those situations is what gave me the most peace, because even with my sister, she was still able to hear me, and I was just able to talk to her and just open up to her about a lot of the stuff that was going on. She may not have been able to respond, but she listened to me. And I was glad, because that gave me peace that she could know that I was going to be okay. Because she got what she wanted, that I was going to be okay. And it's hard, these things are not easy. I'm not going to stand here and pretend that this stuff's easy, because it's not. It's hard. But the nice thing is that when you have healthy people around you that will run with you, that will guide you, that will strengthen you, that will be there to help you and pick you up when things are hard, it becomes much, much easier, It becomes much more bearable. And I'm going to share with you guys this verse, this Bible verse that I always share in these times of tragedy, because that's really what this is. But at the same time, it's not just a tragedy, but it's also that we have hope in these times, because we know that person is no longer suffering. We know that they are no longer dealing with everything that they were dealing with, and now they can be at peace, especially as going into my beliefs, as followers of Christ, that we have faith and hope that those who have died and that have put their faith in Christ, they are not dead, but merely they are just sleeping. That we will see them again, that we will be reunited in paradise, and that we will all be together when there is no more death, there is no more sadness, there is no more tears, and that it is just perfection, that we will just live forever. And the verse I'm referring to is in Psalms 147, 2-6. It's a little picture I always have of it, where it talks about, He heals the brokenhearted and bandages their wounds. He counts the stars and assigns each a name. Our Lord is great, with limitless strength. We'll never comprehend what He knows and does. God puts the fallen on their feet again. And another one that I always like to use is Proverbs 24:17, or Proverbs 24:16, correction, where it says, For the righteous falls 7 times and rises again and again, but the wicked stumble when calamity strikes. The number 7 is obviously very significant because, for anybody that actually pays attention, 7 is representative of completion, perfect. And it's something that a lot of people sometimes don't realize. That, the Bible talks about how God is always near those who are brokenhearted, that those who are weeping, who are just heartbroken, you know, and that God hears them. He knows how they're feeling, and He's with them always. And that's why the Word of God talks about how our life is merely just a breath. It just goes by so quick that you get one life. Use it wisely. You're given free will. Use it wisely, you know? And it's something that as people sometimes are really stubborn about, you know? But like I said, I'm not able to understand 100% how you guys feel. I can't stand here and pretend and tell you that I can 100% relate to what you're going through if you've lost somebody in this time. I can't. But I can tell you that I know what it feels like to lose somebody. I know what it feels like to lose. I know what it feels like to have my heart broken. I know what it feels like to not feel good enough, to feel like I've messed up, that I wish I had more time, that if only I'd done this differently, maybe things would have been different, or maybe if I had talked to them more, I would have felt this way, or etc., etc., and the list just goes on and on. But I'm here to tell you that there's no point in trying to beat yourself up, because it doesn't help you at all. I know that as people, as human nature is, we always like to focus on the short term rather than the long term. We always like to focus on the short term gains rather than the long term gains. And if we're being honest, yes, when it comes to coping mechanisms, sometimes we focus on short term rather than long term. We only do what feels good. So sometimes we turn to, you know, alcohol or drugs, or maybe we start making a lot of poor decisions, maybe financially, emotionally, physically. We just make a lot of poor decisions in the short term because it's what makes us feel good. It's what helps us to cope. And we always try to use that smokescreen of like, oh, this helps me deal with this, that this is helping me. But in reality, it's not. It's just making things worse, and it's causing more issues. The smart thing to do is to focus on long terms. Is like, okay, if I do this, how is this going to affect me, my future relationships, and where do I see myself in the next 4 years? Because if I do this, am I going to grow as a person? Am I going to digress as a person? Or what happens? You know, it's asking those questions but it also comes down to being vulnerable and just admitting, hey, I don't have everything figured out. I need someone to talk to. And I guarantee you, when you make that decision that you want to be vulnerable and be open, those people will show up that want to talk to you and actually get to know you and walk life with you. That they're going to be there. That they're not just going to show up when things get hard and then dip. No, they're going to stay there, and they're going to be firmly planted and walk with you. That they will endure with you. And that's why I always say that one of my mentors, or really one of the guys that I look up to, Pastor JP and Pastor David, that they always say, change your playground and change your playmates. Who are you running with? Because if they're not running with you, they're holding you back. You know, change your playground and change your playmates, you know? And that's just the reality of it, you know? And sometimes it's hard to realize that. But I just hope that with this discussion and me being vulnerable and being open and sharing my experiences, that it has comforted some of you knowing that, hey, he doesn't have everything figured out. But he's willing to have hope that things are better, that things will get better. And that you just have to trust. You just have to believe. And sometimes it's hard for us because we don't see the light at the end of the tunnel sometimes. Sometimes we think it's foggy. But when we look forward and keep our chin up, you know, one of my mentors, he always tells me, chin up, chest out, you know? And don't have your head down because it doesn't help you. Keep your chin up, chest out, move forward. Don't stop moving forward. And sometimes it's hard, you know? It's easier said than done. Because trust me, there's multiple times where I just want to stay on the ground when I fall down and beat myself up and just wallow. But I also realize that, hey, maybe this isn't the best thing to do. A lot of the lies that I believed growing up have changed, and some of them have been conquered. But obviously, like I said, I don't have everything figured out. I'm still dealing with some of them. And that's why I said is focus on the long-term game. Don't focus on the short term. Think about what you do. If you can live with the consequences of it, cool. If you can't live with the consequences of what you do, you shouldn't be doing it. That doesn't include the argument of whether it's the good thing or the right thing, or good or the wrong thing to do, or, it's not really, it doesn't encompass that. But at that point, if you can live with it, then you can start debating, is this really a good thing or is this a bad thing? But aside from that, that's on y'all to decide what you do. But I hope that this discussion, or really me sharing my experiences, has helped you at least shed more light on this idea of dealing with loss, because like I said, this really isn't a how-to, because it's different with everybody, because everybody's experiences are different. But it involves a change in a perspective is what it requires. It requires being open and being vulnerable, which is something that as a society we just don't promote, We just promote, keep it to yourself, move forward, don't say anything, and move on, get over it. When that's just not true. And I really hope that this discussion has helped some of y'all. Again, I am sorry for your losses. If you guys have recently been through a loss, or in the course of your life you've lost somebody, I'm sorry. I really do mean that from the bottom of my heart. I hope you guys know that I care about you guys a lot. You guys are awesome. You guys clearly care about me and care about my well-being, because you guys check up on me. You guys saw how I was asking how I was doing when my grandfather passed away, and seeing how I was doing and checking in on me. And then obviously you guys continue to support me, and that really means a lot to me. And I thank you guys for that. Thank you for being an amazing audience. And like I said, I may not have all the amazing fancy smancy tools that all my peers have, but I know that the one thing I do have is that I'm genuine, and that I am very open, that I'm allowing myself to be vulnerable with y'all, because I feel like that's just how things are supposed to be, is that we need to be vulnerable and be honest with ourselves and share how we feel and how these feelings make us feel. Like how are we, interpreting these feelings? How are we, approaching these feelings? Like how are we, expressing these feelings? How are we dealing with them, And these are questions that we have to ask ourselves on a daily basis. And it only starts when we become vulnerable and allow ourselves to talk about them, and listen. And also it involves us to be willing to listen and to be willing to share. But aside from that, I thank you guys for this time that you've given me to talk to you and, be more honest, I hope that it was helpful. I hope that it encourages some of you. I hope that, it sheds a little bit more light on my personal life, which you guys know I'm pretty much an open book. If you guys want to talk more about this stuff, you guys always know you can hit me up and talk to me anytime. I'll gladly love to talk to you and sit down sometime. But aside from that, thank you guys for your time. Thank you guys for everything. I know we will have another episode this week and we will be talking, but until then, actually, maybe we might do another episode this week. Maybe, but we'll find out. But again, thank you guys for this time. I hope you guys have a wonderful week. Please be safe. Continue to wash your hands. Continue to take care of others. Continue to be mindful of the situation going on outside and respecting your local authorities. And, following what we're asked to do in this situation, because it's not easy for everyone. It really isn't, but we just have to respect the rules that are already in place and not try to go overboard and try to think, we'll do whatever we want. Okay, let's calm down, pump your brakes. But aside from that, thank you guys for everything. I love you guys to death. Please be safe. Don't do anything dumb. And I'll see you guys soon. Bye, guys. Hey there. Thank you for listening to today's episode. I really appreciate it. Thank you guys so much for taking time out of your day and listening to today's episode. If you're interested in supporting the show, whether it be financially, clicking the follow button, or just sharing the episode, it all works for me, guys. Thank you guys so much for your time, and I love you guys to death.